I'm Nick Hernandez, and you're listening to the Positivity Matters podcast, where we have conversations with scholars and community builders that focus on well being, positive psychology, and human flourishing. Please visit our website, www.positivitymatters.org, and also subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or YouTube. My guest today, Roger DeWitt, is both a life coach and ADHD coach. He's been supporting business owners, creative professionals, and the professionally creative, as well as mentoring other coaches to build extraordinary lives, careers, and small businesses. As a trained ADHD coach, he specializes in helping his wonderful creatives to focus, follow through, and find peace and space in a fast paced world that is always grabbing for their attention. Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Nick, it's so nice to be here, and thank you for having me on. It's such a
This
privilege.
is this is a delight. I had searched for the intersection of positive psychology and ADHD, and I believe a clip came up on a YouTube, and then in further searching, not only just a clip of talking about ADHD and positive psychology, but you did a master's capstone at the University of Pennsylvania on ADHD and well-being. So that is all incredibly fascinating, and I see that as potentially very beneficial to people out there in the world that are in potential benefit from that kind of perspective. How did this come to be?
So that's I mean, you got a couple of days. I mean, it's been the culmination of a whole lot of stuff. I started out in the world of performing arts. I was an actor. I did musical theater. I toured the country. I did Broadway. I did the whole nine yards. And I discovered in a period in between gigs that there was this thing called coaching, and I realized that you could actually make a living at it. And this was 23 years ago, and I said, I'm in a real ADHD impulsive kind of way, but I said, I'm in. And I started I got trained as a life coach. And it so happened that in my early years as a coach, back in the early 2000s, I two of my mentors were ADHD coaches, and I learned, and all of a sudden, as I started learning about ADHD, my life made sense. And so it was kind of a natural progression for me to start learning about ADHD, learning about ADHD coaching specifically, and that's where it all began. And I actually since 2007, I've been a senior trainer at the ADD Coach Academy. So in addition to coaching uh, people with ADHD, all adults, I'm also a senior trainer training other coaches who want to work with people who have ADHD. So that's how that came about. And as an essential part of any kind of work with somebody who has ADHD, positive psychology isn't just beneficial, it's essential. And so I learned about positive psychology in my training to be an ADHD coach instructor. And it has become such an important part of my work and the way I train that the natural progression was, oh my God, I've got to get a master's degree at UPenn under Marty Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology. And so I wanted to, and then in just one moment, I said, I'm gonna give it a try, and I'm going to try to and I'm going to apply. And sure enough, I applied. I my essay at the beginning was all about, my work with ADHD and how essential a positive psychology was to what I do, and in my work with ADHD. And they said we're in, and I was the very first ADHD coach to ever be let into the program. And so my capstone then, I knew it had to be something on ADHD. And willpower has always been a real dirty word in my vocabulary. And so I wrote my capstone on ADHD, willpower, and interest, a positive approach. And it was uh, it was great. My favorite part of that capstone is really the first 25 pages, because in the first 25 pages, I lay out what ADHD is and why positive psychology is so important. And yeah, yeah. So it's take a read. It's better than an Ambien to put you to sleep.
Or yeah, and so for listeners maybe that aren't familiar with ADHD, my understanding is there's three basic components that can potentially go into an ADHD diagnosis: distractibility, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. The I've heard that the inattentive ADHD is primarily the distractibility and impulsivity, and without the hyperactivity, it often goes undiagnosed, especially with females, is what I've heard.
Mhm.
But those are just some of what I've learned about ADHD. What is it, or how would you flesh out like describing what ADHD is, maybe for people that aren't very familiar with it?
Sure. So I think whenever somebody thinks of somebody with ADHD, they think of the kid in the classroom that's bouncing off the walls and throwing spitballs and getting into fights. And that's the pure, we call it presentations now. It used to be three types of ADHD. Now it's one type of ADHD. It's just ADHD, and now it's three presentations. And one is hyperactivity, um, in, um, uh, inattentive type presentation, and then combined. And so if you think of it, if the reason that it gets so underdiagnosed is because for the inattentive type, the ADHD presents as um, the world of ideas, and the internal world is infinitely more interesting than the external world. And so consequently, the kids are just seen as dreamy, as daydreamers. They're maybe have anxiety, they're, things like that, but they're in their head for good or for ill. And ADHD is the way I see it. Uh, People with ADHD are often seen as it's even got deficit in the name, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I don't see it um, as a deficit. I see it as a unique brain wiring. And for the ADHD brain, the brain is uniquely wired towards interest, but we have to define what interest is. And interest is anything that stimulates the brain, positive or negative. And so the ADHD brain has a unique need for interest to actually keep, for lack of a better term, to keep it awake. And
Mm.
so that we are constantly seeking stimulation. And if stimulation doesn't exist in our environment, we will find it, create it, or magnify it. So we'll get distracted with something else. We'll create a tussle, or something going on in our head of a daydream, or we'll take something in the environment and magnify it so that we can create a interest, because interest is the fuel for the brain. Part of it is also the ADHD brain. There's a reward chemical. It does many things. It's called dopamine, but it's one of the things it does is it's gives us a sense of reward. So, the the cave person who finds a berry bush, surprise, oh, it's exciting. I get a hit of dopamine, a reward. You get a slice of cake, woo, sugar, dopamine, reward. Um, we, as people with ADHD, we have, according to Nora Volkow, the researcher, we have fewer dopamine receptors, and the
Mm.
dopamine transport that takes the dopamine from one neuron to another is less effective. So
Mm,
consequently, we actually get less reward than an average person. So we're
mm.
constantly seeking stimulation, not only to keep our brains awake, to keep our brains stimulated and energized, but also because we don't get as much reward as you might expect out of a particular activity. So that's why, uh, one person at a wedding might go and have one slice of cake, but the person with ADHD who needs more reward, that one piece of cake isn't going to give us as much satisfaction. So we go back for a second or a third, that just as an example. And so we have to look at it from the lens whenever we start thinking about ADHD, we have to look at it from the lens of interest and stimulation first and foremost. I don't know if that
Is
makes
that
sense.
why? Yeah, is that why I like buffets?
I always like the ideas of buffets, but in the aftermath, it's never as good a good it's never a good idea. It's kind of like fish and chips. In theory, it sounds great, but I just feel like crap afterwards.
I've tried to find the healthiest version of it, and it seems to be these like the all you can eat sushi and like
Ah, there you
focus on
go.
just the fish part. But
That's great.
anyways, yeah.
Uh,
Now I'm guessing that if people are listening to this podcast, that they're interested in well-being and maybe have some familiarity with it. Positive psychology, the empirical study of human flourishing. What does this entail? What is positive psychology?
Positive psychology is the study of the other half of psychology. Psychology in general has been a really, really good at, bringing people from -10 to zero to healing negative mental illness and bringing it to homeostasis. That's where it's been most of the focus. It's been on about 1998. So that's, what is that, 25 years ago. Marty Seligman was the president of APA, and he said, we've done a really good job on that end, but we've done practically no empirical research on what takes people from 0 to 10 instead of from -10 to zero, what takes them to from 0 to 10, what helps people to thrive and flourish. So positive psychology is the empirical study of how people thrive, why people thrive, and what constitutes well-being I mean, for lack of a better term, happy life.
Yeah. And so with the ADHD, I'm guessing that undiagnosed, that could probably present some barriers towards the realization of flourishing and thriving. Um, or
Yeah,
maybe it's, just doing the same things as someone without ADHD is going to work as well.
yeah.
Or I guess
So,
so. What does the path to happiness and well being look like for the average person, and then what would the difference be like with someone with the ADHD brain?
so the pathway, I mean, the one of the main theories in positive psychology is PERMA, which is positive emotion, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, achievement, and then some people will put at a V, which is for vitality and physical health. So that is kind of the essence of the theory of how people flourish and what constitutes the elements of well-being. That is not different for somebody with ADHD. What's different with somebody with ADHD is the misunderstanding of ADHD. So here's what, I've said it's a unique brain wiring where the ADHD brain is uniquely wired towards interest. So what makes it so confusing is that is what we call situational variability. So what it's really mind-bending for people around the person with ADHD as well as for the person with ADHD themselves, because in one situation they're focused, they can follow through, they can get things done. They don't procrastinate. They don't have emotional outbursts. They don't get all distracted. And in another situation, they're a mess. And all of that is present. And it's so confusing because situational variability tells us that in for people with ADHD in areas of low interest, ADHD traits tend to be high. But in areas of high interest, ADHD traits tend to be low. And so if anybody is listening to this and they have heard this phrase from a well-meaning other, I don't understand. You can pay attention and follow through here in this situation. Why can't you do it here? Or a parent, you can pay attention to those damn video games. Why can't you pay attention in math class? Well, that is a complete and total misunderstanding of the ADHD brain because and how it's interpreted in the general population and even among people with ADHD, even those with a diagnosis, they see it as a character flaw and a deficit and a problem to be solved. So now if we put it in the context of positive psychology, it's the medical model. The medical model is how do I fix what's broken? How do I take somebody from -10 to 0? But what's completely missing is the positive aspect, the strengths aspect. How do we do it instead of how can I get you to stop doing or to do this better? How do you do what you do, and how can we magnify that? And that's what becomes essential for people with ADHD because ADHD people with ADHD can't do it the way other people do, but they can do it brilliantly well their way. There's an old saying. It's they would if they could. That's what the saying is. The saying is if people, if somebody could just muscle through with ADHD, could just muscle through, well, they would. But it's they can't in an area of low interest. So the goal is to magnify the strengths, maximize the focusing on the strengths so that they can elevate the level of interest doing it their way. And I think that's the thing that we have to do as coaches is we have to really focus on their strengths. And now there's another thing that's really confusing about people with ADHD. Um, all well, everybody in the life of a person with ADHD is well-meaning. Let's get that at the baseline. Unfortunately, they make big mistakes because they don't understand ADHD, and it can be detrimental. And so consequently, they are validated or anti-validated for what they can't do. So the person with ADHD is so focused on what they can't do that they completely lose sight of what they can do or how they do it. They look at their weaknesses exclusively and the resilience and the how hard they try get knocked down and pick themselves back up again. It's remarkable. So their intentions are powerful. The problem is they're trying to do it a way that their brain doesn't work. And so from that perspective, we've got to switch the narrative. We've got to move the focus. Everybody has to clean their toilet. I get it. That's not interesting to anybody. But if we just focus on cleaning the toilet, it's like, I'm really fond of saying that focusing just on our weaknesses is like trying to polish a turd. No matter how much you polish it, it's still going to be a turd. So, I mean, let's expand our strengths. And that's where positive psychology becomes so incredibly important. That when we focus on that, not only do we naturally raise the level of interest, when you're working in your strengths, when you're working in your character strengths, when you're working in passion and purpose, or taking something that's less interesting and boosting it with those, reframing it, it becomes a powerful, powerful thing. And we just need to figure out for each individual what that looks like. Because the other old saying is, if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. ADHD looks different across every human being. And so that's where where positive psychology becomes not only valuable, but essential for the life of the person with ADHD.
Thank you so much for that overview here. Now, you mentioned strengths along the way. Thank you
Mhm.
for uh, playing along and sharing your top five strengths from the Values in Action Institute's survey of character strengths. I see that yours came out as perspective, humor, kindness, love, and social intelligence.
Yep.
Tell me about these strengths and how you see them playing out through the work that you do.
Yeah. So perspective, humor, and kindness. So those are my top threes. Perspective's
Mm.
number one, humor is second, kindness is number three. My motto is after when I saw that, my motto is comedy before kindness. Perspective, humor, and kindness. And that's actually displaying, that's like the essence of humor. And I think when you look at these character strengths, the criteria is, do they feel effortless to use? Do they feel essential, and are they energizing? And so all of these things are parts of how I see myself as essential to who I am. So, for example, humor, if humor didn't exist, I wouldn't, I would be I would be logically incoherent. I wouldn't know what I would be. Perspective is about seeing the big picture, wise counsel, being able to understand what's going on and support someone else with wise counsel because we see the big picture. That's what I do kind of every day in my work as a coach. It's also how I found coaching because I talk to people. I live in New York City, and so I talk to people, and so complete strangers, I'll strike up a conversation. And I remember in a particularly weird week, three different complete and total strangers who I was having a conversation with, said to me in the middle of the conversation, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but and it all came pouring out. And so, I mean, that's happened to me all my whole life.
Mm.
Humor, everybody in my family is some kind of funny. But humor is really, I just one of my coping mechanisms, I think, is seeing the world through a unique lens of humor. If I don't know what the world would be a miserable place if we couldn't laugh our ways through. My mom used to say, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. So, I guess that's part of how I was raised, but that is an important part. Kindness is the other arm, the action arm of love. And kindness is about, doing things for other people. It's kind of imbued in what I do as a coach is this sense of compassion and love for the people who are coming to me with ADHD, and seeing them as whole, capable, and resourceful, even if they can't see that, because they are. There are immense strengths in ADHD as well as huge weaknesses. But if we just focus on the weaknesses, we're not magnifying those strengths. And then intelligence is kind of being able to read people. And those that I like, if you look at who I was as an actor and who I am as a coach, like all of that is like a recipe for either being an actor or being a coach. And it's kind of just how I'm wired.
That's fascinating. I I've heard of ADHD that typically in the cognitive domains that the working memory tends to be like the least like the worst of the various cognitive skills, and that you had a career in acting is astonishing to me. Maybe it was like the experience of flow or the aesthetic experience. What was it like? How was
Yeah.
that? What is that part of life like?
So here's the interesting thing, and this is why I did theater and not film. Um, so working memory is the memory that we use to hold in our head what we need to use it to do something. So remembering a phone number, blah blah blah, 555 1212, or the okay, loaf of bread, bottle of milk, come home right away. Those that kind of rehearsal memory, but it's limited. And everybody, I don't know what their current research is, but the people with ADHD have a smaller amount that they can hold in working memory. So think of it like a shelf. If you have a shelf and that's your working memory, that's like right in front of you, and your shelf can hold 4 items, and you have 4 items on the shelf is full. But now if something else comes in that needs to be placed in working memory, either it doesn't make the shelf or something on that shelf falls off. So
Mm.
I'm holding now all these different things in my head, like, oh, I have to go upstairs and grab my keys. And then I have to go put the milk away and I have to do this. All of a sudden my memory, working memory that I'm holding here is gets full. And then the phone rings and I'm, oh, hi, Bob. How are you? So great to talk to you. Da, 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 da. Something is now fallen off. And it's probably, what was I going to do to go upstairs? Oh, yeah, I can't remember. Oh, it was my keys. I was supposed to get my keys, whatever it is. But working memory is just about what you need in the moment for short term. That is really important in film because you get your scripts the night before with changes at 10 p.m. and you're there at 6 a.m. the next morning with your lines supposed to be memorized. So that is all about working memory. That is all about keeping chunks of information readily to you can use it and then you can let it go. In theater, you have weeks and weeks of rehearsal. And
Mm.
so for me, I've got my script, I'm learning it kinesthetically as well as auditorily and verbally, and I'm learning it and it's going into short long-term memory. It's going to short-term and long-term memory because what I've done is I've engaged all my modalities. I've engaged listening, I've engaged movement, kinesthetic movement, I've engaged, the visual of reading it on the page while I'm learning it, things like that. So it's a very different experience. And that's why I'm really much better suited for for um for theater than for film and TV.
Out of curiosity, what have some of your favorite roles been on the stage?
Well, I played for 4.5 years. I was in Phantom of the Opera, and for
Mm.
little under 4 of those years, I was Monsieur Andre, um, in the one of the managers in the Phantom of the Opera. That was a thrill of my life. Um, I think I did a show called Adding Machine, a musical, which was the hardest music I've ever had to sing.
Mm.
And that was a real joy. There have been a lot of really good roles and fun things that I've been able to do around the country. But those are two of them. Uh, I'm pretty well retired from acting right now. Maybe I have one or two more shows in me, but I'm
Okay.
I'm a full-time coach. So,
So, full-time coach,
mhm.
assistant instructor in the Masters in Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania, and the developer of an artificial intelligence coaching model. Let's talk about these things here. Assisting in the classroom. What has that been like?
Wow. So that has been, you want to learn something, teach it. I mean, to be in the room, not just as a student, but with the kind of brilliance that uh, that Marty Seligman, I'm in this the fall semester. I'm one of the assistant instructors for Marty Seligman. It's a miraculous thing to be a part and an honor to be a part of this transformative process because the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program is unique. It's for full-time people with full-time lives, and full-time jobs who are doing a full-time master's degree.
Mm,
And it's unique because it's not just for the academic. The goal of the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program is, and Marty's goal was to get real people the knowledge of positive psychology so they can take it to their domains. So
mm,
you have a nurse, you have a coach, you have a teacher, you have somebody in hospitality, you have an FBI, somebody in the FBI. All of these people are in one class. An executive at Microsoft, they're in one class, all learning the same things and diving deep into that so that they can take it back into their domains. And that's kind of what we do. So it's an amazing thing. I feel incredibly privileged. I am able to I mean I we have incredible speakers that come in: Barbara Fredrickson, John Rady, Jonathan Haidt, Paul Bloom. I mean, all of these people that come in that are just luminaries in the field of positive psychology that come in and talk and lecture for the MAP students, and it's an honor to be there. And I'm there to support them and to answer their questions, and I get to learn it at a deeper level. And it's just,
mm.
that's the dirty little secret. I get as much out of it as the students do. And they're all like, I mean, they're all like, the median age is probably what, the mean age is probably like 35 or 40.
Mm.
I got the degree when I was 57. We have I think the oldest Mapster was in the late 70s, I think.
Oh,
And
cool.
and we'd had them as young as like 22, 21.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the 20th class for the MAP program at UPenn. So it's actually, today was the day it all started. And it's a pretty uh amazing experience, and I feel incredibly honored and very, very humbled to be
Mm.
a part of the program.
All right. Now, AI coach Roger. What is this? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so the assisted instructor, Roger, is very different than the AI, artificial intelligence, Roger. So, um, long story short, I became very, very interested in AI a couple of years ago. I'm not a, I like tech, but I'm not a programmer or anything like that. But I realized there was so much you could do with ChatGPT, and I thought, let me see if I can teach it to be a coach. So I spent about, in one single thread, I spent about, half a day just kind of like telling it everything I know about coaching and ADHD and how to coach. And then I said, now coach me. And I started and I did the coaching. And of course it did what ChatGPT does, and which was, oh, well, here's all the things you can do, and here's seven strategy, blah, 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 it was all over the place. And I said, no, 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 no. I need to teach you to be a coach. And this is a conversational model. So about a day's worth of this, and I realized I'd kind of hit my limit, but I got it to be pretty good at the end of that
Mm.
day. And as part of the MAP program that year, one of the speakers was an expert on AI and big data, and they talked about how AI is going to transform coaching and therapy, not replace coaches and therapists, but to transform the world of coaching and therapy. And I was shortly thereafter, I was at a coaching conference, and then my mind was spinning because I'm like, I need this. I want this. This is where we're going. I got to figure out how we can get AI into the world of coaching. And I happened to be, one of the sessions was on AI, and I happened to be at a table. And at a conference, you're going around, you're going, hey, how are you? What do you do? Who do you coach? That's good, good. Going to person, and come to this guy, and I said, and who do you coach? And he says, oh, I'm not a coach. I said, really? What you doing here at a coaching conference? He goes, I have a company, and my mission is to help coaches um, create AI clones of themselves so they can serve more people and scale their business. And I said, we need to talk. And
Hmm.
I knew enough about ADHD to know that he knew his stuff, and I really liked his vision. I'd seen a sample of what he was working on, his company was working on, and I said, I'm in. I said, let's do it. And so for about 8 months, we created. They were creating and I taught them more about coaching than they ever wanted to know. And they're starting with ADHD coaching, which is a very specific subset of coaching and probably one of the more difficult ones because the ADHD, you got to listen through the ADHD lens. And we started working on creating this AI conversation bot, um, at least at first, um, that understood the coaching conversation, the same kind of coaching conversation that the International Coaches Federation talks about. The way I train coaches, I dictated into a document what I know about ADHD. I uploaded my capstone so that in the back end of this, and then we started training it. And I needed to train it. I trained it like I train a mentee or like I coach a mentee. And I would do a conversation and I would then give notes to the developers, and they would go tweak the back end and turn the knobs, and have gotten it to a really, really wonderful level right now. I've had a couple of assessors who have experimented with it, and they said, in their estimation, it's coaching at a high professional, middle to high professional level of coaching. And so it is an autonomous AI coach Roger. It has my personality, it has my way of coaching, and it is out there. We've launched. It is out there coaching real people right now. And the thing that's so exciting to me is one of the biggest challenges that I have in my coaching business, and I have a very robust practice, but one of the biggest challenges is that um, there are so many people who need coaching that can't afford it, for one reason or another, or they don't have access to it because of stigma. They don't want to talk to somebody. They don't, they don't believe in this mumbo jumbo, or they just can't afford it, or some of the above. And it's fascinating because some of my subscribers who are using the AI, that by the way is available 24/7, 365 days a year. They can have as short or as long a session as they want with the AI. And right now it's text to text. Um, but within the next couple of months, it's going to be voice to voice. Right now, you can
Hmm.
input with voice, but it's a written response. Shortly, we're going to have input with voice and output with my voice, and that's going to take it to another level. But funny, I mean, it's interesting because a couple of the people that are subscribed to this um, are people who had bad experiences and with other coaches or bad experience with therapy, and they can't afford it, and that's why they're using this. It is my personal belief that the future of coaching, there's going to be three type of clients. One is people who don't want anything other than an AI for whatever reason. Another group is going to be people who want nothing to do with AI, only want a human, and they can afford coaching, so that's what they'll get. But I think there's going to be a very large middle of people who want both. They want a human coach to touch base with, but then they want the convenience of, anytime they want to talk to AI Roger, they can whip out their phone and have a session, as short or as long a session. And we've got brainstorm mode, we've got coaching mode. Soon we're going to have accountability, get it done mode. It is. I am so excited about it, and I am so proud of how well it coaches. It's like having a child that's doing good work. It's amazing, and the response has been really, really exceptional. But yeah, we're in full launch mode right now.
And where can people find AI Coach Roger?
So ADHDcoachNYC.com, and then is my website. And then they can go to the AI coaching button in the navigation bar, and they can learn all about AI coach Roger. They can also learn about me and the rest of my website too, but that's the thing I'm most excited with right now.
Thank you. And
Thank you for asking.
yeah, as I'm reflecting on what we've talked about so far, we've mentioned the ADHD, we've mentioned positive psychology, but I'm guessing there may be some people that maybe heard the word coaching, but are not familiar with what that entails. What is coaching?
A great question. I think coaching is a support structure where two people come together as partners, the client and the ADHD coach. The ADHD coach is uniquely trained because they're listening not only for the normal things a coach would listen for, like what does this person really want, what's getting in the way of what they want, things like that, and supporting them to do, be, or have whatever it is they want. The unique thing about an ADHD coach is they are uniquely trained in understanding the ADHD brain. And so everything that they listen for is filtered through the lens of ADHD and understanding what's going on with the ADHD. So it's all the other things, passion, purpose, having what you want, doing, what's getting in the way, moving barriers and blocks, as well as um, the understanding the ADHD and how that is interacting. So my goal is with my clients is not to make them do it the way everybody else does it, but to find out what it is they truly, truly want, and then support them to get it their way, understanding the way their brain works so they can magnify their strengths and do what we call scaffolding of their weaknesses. So the strategies parts and is part of the scaffolding, but you don't need as much of that if you're maximizing the strengths.
Hmm, fascinating. Thank you for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of like, if you think of coaching, if you think of therapy as, healing the past, this is with an eye to being well in the moment. Think of coaching as people who are basically well and helping them thrive. So it's a present and forward focus rather than healing the past. That's kind of a gross generalization, but that's kind of the distinction. We sometimes look at the past as coaches too, but only with an eye to
Hmm,
the present and moving forward.
interesting. Yeah. Just wanted to dwell for a moment on the humor strength that you mentioned. That is one place where we have overlap in our top five strengths. And I was when I saw that one, I was rather surprised, and I saw in brackets that it also had playfulness behind
Hmm.
humor. So that's I thought of myself as playfulness, yes. Uh, humor, I had a lot of questions about that one. I had the good fortune of um, marrying a lady who has a quick laugh. So that is one that I'd seen that strength. I did not think of myself as a humorous person. Playful, yes, but she would laugh sometimes at the things that I would say, and it became a little more deliberative over the years to think about it in that way. So I see that part of it as a work in progress, but that's I think one of the ideas that I have around strengths is maybe that we might sense an affinity with other people with maybe similar strengths, and like that might form some initial glue for building positive relationships. And then I'm kind of guessing that the like having some different strengths also, it's kind of like, maybe if one of your top strengths is like way down there on mine, like for me, it would be polishing the turd. But because it's your maybe one of your top strengths, like I'm guessing that there's something catalytic around being around someone that has it as the like a top strength that makes it easier potentially to, if I wanted to like build up that part, or maybe somewhere from the middle of the strengths or something. But I thought
Yeah,
there's kind of this like, maybe some of those connecting things, and then this like sort of generativity that can emerge with that sort of conscious focus on strengths and like awareness of our own, learning about others, and like
a-
that interaction. I don't know.
absolutely. And here's the thing about the via character strengths. The via character strengths do not measure weakness. They don't measure, it's not just because, for me, humility is number 24, it's the lowest strength. It doesn't mean that I don't have it. It just means it's low on the scale of how I see myself. And if you know me, you know why. But it's that, that that's I'm an actor, or have been. So there's that. But so we all have all 24. And we all have all 24. This is a rank order of something that is universal in everyone. And they've done some incredible research to the point of taking it to places where there is no internet and you have to use a pencil and paper to test this. But these are born of a number of years of research around how people describe what's best in people. And what we look at with the character strengths is we look at your top strengths are usually what we call your signature strengths, and these are the essentials to you. They're effortless, energizing, and essential. And so this is they're really identification. How do I identify what is important to how I see myself? Now, that being said, our strengths can be overused as well as underused. And so we have to be aware of the continuum of use, but they don't measure weakness. Even though your strength, I think with most people with ADHD, number 22, 23, 24 is almost always self-regulation. As one of, yeah, of course. I saw your hand go up. There you go. Mine too.
Guilty.
You know, mine's 23. And but here's the thing. Think about this, Nick. In areas of high interest, I'm betting you that self-regulation goes straight to the top in an area of high
Yeah,
interest, doesn't it?
it
So
does. Yeah.
it's not that you don't have it. It's the fact that it's a rise to the occasion strength. Now, for somebody with ADHD, that rise to occasion is in an area of high interest. So we all have them. They can rise to the occasion, and there are some that are strong for how we identify who we are at our best. And I think that's the distinction there. So yeah, if your wife, your wife might love, humility, for example. Humility is a strength where you love to let other people shine. So if somebody has, humor and that makes them shine, somebody with humility would be a great, that's a great compliment right there, because there's somebody who does something that makes them shine, and that person with humility is going to really magnify that. So yeah, absolutely, there can be complementary strengths, but remember, we all have all 24. By the same token, sometimes if something's high on your via that's important to you, if it's not high for someone else, that can be a hot button. So button strengths like fairness. If fairness is high for you and then there's somebody else who's being unfair, that can really get you going,
Mm.
because of how it can be a hot button for you because it's such an important part of who you are and how you see the world.
Yeah, yeah. The contrast one of my friends, he's a retired theoretical physicist, and he had self-regulation as his number one strength.
God bless him.
It's and he's like, oh yeah, he also had curiosity way up there, so we had that in common. So it was this beautiful dynamic of um like me and the ideation about well-being, and his curiosity is so high he'll just entertain any notion. But then his critical thinking, I think that was probably number three, and he just would just skewer like any idea, like or like he could see the holes in everything, and it just like it would just level all the ideas. And there was just like one time when I laid out this happy life framework that I was mentioning to you,
Mhm.
uh and he's like, that's beautiful. So I got through the gauntlet one time. But yeah,
Awesome.
it's yeah, that's a fun
Awesome.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Listeners, you can try this inventory of strengths yourself. Look for via survey of character strengths, and you can find that at viacharacter.org, or the University of Pennsylvania hosts a website where you can try it out also. It's pretty fascinating. Okay, now looking towards the future, uh, where do you hope to go with your work? Well, I mean, we've talked about some things that are
Mhm.
just getting going for you. So are there other things that you can see on the horizon here?
Well, I think, I, I, as I've been working with this AI, um, I'd like to think that in part that's going to be part of my legacy, that will outlive me because I feel like I'm contributing to, in a very early adopting way, to what I think is going to change the industry of coaching, for a positive way. It's not it's not going to make coaches obsolete at all. Um, but it's going to be an incredibly powerful tool to help the world flourish and to help the world, you know, because I mean, let's face it, there's a good portion of the world absolutely cannot afford coaching. And
Hmm.
so I think AI is going to be really instrumental in helping the world flourish. And I feel like my part of in that is the work I'm doing right now with this AI clone, and I'm an incredible advocate for understanding, um, around ADHD. My goal, my vision is I see a world where people with ADHD are not just, um, tolerated, they are valued. They are
Hmm.
seen as incredible values to they are. And when a person with ADHD is in their strength, is in their purpose, is in their passion, they're kind of unstoppable
Hmm.
in a really, really wonderful way. And so my goal is to continue helping people understand ADHD. Um, and I know that I'm going to be doing that through my work and through my work with the AI, um, probably till the day I die, because I have a big vision for this AI coaching, Coach Roger, a coach clone of me, um, and it's going to take some big work, and I'm gonna get it there. Yeah, I'm gonna get it there. So that's where I am, and I want to enjoy time with my spouse, and you know, do that as well. But I don't see me giving up work anytime soon.
Yeah. So, and living in New York, is positive psychology. Uh, do you think what could it do for New York City? It's hypothetical question. Like, the intersection of community and positive psychology, that's like that's my jam. Like, what could it mean for New York City? Like if they had like I think Santa Monica, California for a while had a like a well-being coordinator like in the
Yeah.
city hall. And it's like, I just see so much potential, like for this to like have an impact in the way that communities are designed, the types of public activities that are there, like the aesthetics. It's it's like I think there's a Happy City book out there, and you're in the Big Apple. Like, what do you think?
Well, I think, honest to God, um, I think New York in general is good. I think because New Yorkers tend to be gruff, that they're not as kind as other people, but that's actually not true. New Yorkers are as kind as anybody I've ever met, as long as they know, they don't have to be afraid of you. And we all have this kind of armor as we go out, because when you're out, you're in the flow of things. So I think there's a lot of positive things in there that have a different kind of wrapping. As far as the world of communities, I love, you know, beautifully designed communities and the aesthetics, and I that speaks to one thing. But I don't know if you've ever read any of the work by Isaac Prelotensky, but he's done some amazing study and work around mattering. And mattering is in essence, um, being val being valued. Oh God, I'm going to get this wrong now. It's it's ah,
Valuing and being valued.
Thank you. Valuing and being valued. I mean, that's in essence, but there's a specific word language around that. But it's basically contributing, being able to contribute, being of value and feeling valued. So that's it. Being of value to others and feeling valued. And it's the combination of the two. You can see that in the macro and in the micro. In a one-on-one relationship, being of value to the other person and feeling valued, like you're important, that is incredibly important in a relationship. It's also important in a small group. It's important in groups. It's important in cities. It's important in cultures. It's important in the world. So his work goes from the very, very small one-on-one out to a worldwide view of valuing others and feeling valued.
Thank you for the shout out. Professor Prilotensky was our guest on episode 9,
Ah,
and you're the second guest on the show who has pointed out his work in that very concept of mattering. So I think that's a great thing. I will focus more on that and learn more. Thank you for the suggestion there.
it's he's done some amazing work, and he's very, very, talk about somebody who has the strength of humor. He's hilarious. But you would never think of it because he's this tiny little thin man, and he's like has this kind of interesting voice, but he's this dry wit that just is belly laugh because he's so funny, and yet has done some of the most amazing and in-depth work in terms of communities and cultures.
Awesome. Okay. What what would you like to share with listeners, perhaps that we haven't yet addressed?
Well, a couple of things I think I would say to just about anybody with regard to ADHD is if you have someone with ADHD, um, remember that they would if they could, um, and start listening from the language of both strengths and of interest, um, because and then get some support, because I think it's in one of the it's in the world of coaching, ADHD coaching is very unique. It's one of the few specialties that therapists and doctors will actually recommend a coach, and because what we do is unique, in the coaching world because of the ADHD lens. And so, if you have someone with ADHD, or if you um, are ADHD yourself or suspect you may be, um, get some support. Get the support from a trained ADHD coach who really understands the ADHD lens. So that would be one thing. And you can, I mean, I teach at the ADD Coach Academy, ADDCA.com. Um, they have a list of coaches that are trained by this organization that are spectacular coaches. So I would send you there for that. Um, and just remember, they would if they could. I think those are a couple of things that I would say as far as ADHD goes. Yeah.
Roger DeWitt, thank you so much for being a guest on Positivity Matters. It's been a delight, and I am looking forward to seeing what the future holds for you.
Oh, Nick, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to spill my guts on ADHD. I appreciate the platform to share what I know and what I love because I think it's super important. So thank you for what you do as well.
Glad to do it. Glad to do it.